I've sung the praises of Made In Cookware for a while now. I own many pieces myself. Now Made In has changed nonstick cookware for good with their ceramic-clad pans. They're premium stainless pans with next-gen ceramic coating free of harmful materials. Beautiful, even cooking, and easy to clean. It's even oven safe up to 550 degrees. How do I know how great they are? I added one to my kitchen. Don't need a nonstick pan? Made In has pots, cutlery, bakeware, glassware, and everything you need. Take your home cooking to the next level by upgrading your cookware by going to unitedwedrink.com/madein, MADEIN. Find out why pros trust Made In. Go to unitedwedrink.com/madein and upgrade your kitchen and cooking today. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour, more like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. I think we're actually going to be shut down by the FCC or whatever regulates the airwaves by the end of this. You know, new administration and all. My name is Mike
FCC
Urevich.
isn't going to exist. Come on.
That is true. That's getting cut. And goodbye. With me, as always, Kevin Abbott, Tim Johnson. How are you guys doing tonight?
Just lovely. I mean, and also I have to say that if anyone's listened to any of our last calls, we are definitely an enemy of this administration. Tim?
I don't know, man. I am really looking forward to making America great again.
Again.
Right? No, yeah, obviously. I also do not care for this administration, as witnessed by several reasons I've had to quit other social media sites. But I'm doing good. I'm feeling a little rushed, not because you guys made me feel rushed, but because I put myself into a precarious timing. But you know, I am, if nothing but a victim of my own undoing. So
You're running on Minnesota time. Which I don't think is actually a thing, but I'm making a stereotype about Minnesota people running late on everything because.
Oh no! If I was on Minnesota time, I would have been uncomfortably early. Minnesotans are the type to show up to your wedding when the bride is still getting dressed. So.
I don't know if it's the same stereotype for people in Michigan, but in my family, that's absolutely the case. My dad and I showed up for everything 15 to 20 minutes early. And to this day, my wife has to like pull me back like we're going to like a party at someone's house. And they're like, Kevin, if we leave now, we're going to arrive 15 minutes before they said the parties. I'm like, yeah, that's what you do. It's like, no, you don't do that. So,
right.
Yeah,
right. Well,
maybe it's a whole Midwestern deal. I don't know.
I think it is a Midwestern thing because like, oh, but what if there's traffic? And where there could, so we'll show up 15 minutes late when all the other guests are still probably not there yet. So we're still early. Like, just dial it back.
I know we're all baseball fans here, and I know we're going to talk about beer at some point, but this is funny because whenever I was growing up, one of the great things about being early for everything is we'd get there for batting practice at Tiger Stadium.
Yeah.
And we get to sit down and maybe catch a foul ball or a home run ball or whatever. I loved being in the stadium for batting practice and kind of having your run of the place before the stadium filled up. And let's be honest, the Tiger Stadium, when I was young and watching them, they never filled up because they were never very good. But still in principle, it works. So when I hadn't gone to baseball games until I had my son, and I'm like, oh, let's go down early for batting practice. That's not a thing anymore. They don't let you in the stadium 2 hours beforehand. They let you in and all batting practice has been done. They won't even let you in the stadium before 30 minutes or 40 minutes before the game. And by that time, everyone's off the field.
I didn't know that.
It was news to me.
One of the
That's
cool
insane.
things about when they built Target Field, shit, what's it been now? 10 years? Probably more than that. Anyway, when they built more than that. When they built Target Field though, is they built in like what they called knot holes, right? So the idea of like, the old stadium, there were knot holes and the fences around there so people could peek in. They're not great views, but I will tell you there have been several times where like I'm not going to the game, I don't really care, but I'll go sit in Target Plaza and peek in, and sometimes it's just been for batting practice. I don't have time to stick around to try to catch some of the game, but it is kind of fun, right? Like there's
Get
just something.
autographs. It's
Oh
great.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Cool. So United, we baseball.
It's 15 years old. Your ballpark.
Okay.
So.
No. Well,
Yeah.
I was gonna say it was like 2010, 2011. But then I also forget this is 2025 because everything to me is just not as old as I want it to be, or is not as young as I want it to be. It's always a lot older because
What was it? Last episode we were taking it back to 1997. Was that what was you had said? And Kevin absolutely did not want to go back to that year.
No. But I will say this about baseball and tying it into that kind of mentality. I was texting with my dad. He's our only fan, so I have to make sure I mention him many times on an episode. But we were saying that when the Marlins and the Rockies came into the league, that they were the new teams to me, and forever they'll be the new teams. When
oh
I'm
yeah, for sure.
when I'm 85 years old and talking about baseball, and someone says the Marlins won the championship, that'll probably never happen again. But still, if they say that, I'm like, they're a brand new team. They just can't. It's like, Grandpa, they've been around for 75 years. New teams should have never done expansion.
Yeah,
Right.
they're
So
still expansion. I know. I mean, we've already seen Tampa Bay come in and then change their name. Even like that's how. Like to me, I barely even recognize that they're a team. But yes, I agreed. Marlins, Rockies will always be expansion teams to me. They won't be like
It's
old
so
hat.
it's funny because those are your four most recent team. Well, you mentioned the
Diamondbacks.
Rays, but the Diamondbacks being the other one, and there have been changes to practically all of their logos except for really the Rockies and the Diamondbacks. Like the Diamondbacks have changed colors, but their logos kind of stayed the same. But the Rockies have stayed pretty true, where the Marlins have changed like a bunch of shit. Like they're even a different name.
They went from Florida to Miami. That's a pretty big change.
And
Yeah.
the Rays went from the Devil Rays to the Rays. They changed their logo a little bit here and there. It's so funny that like because you don't usually think of like the new team as needing brand refreshes really, but lo and behold, they have done it because they've been around for a while.
Well, what's also weird to me is when they talk about a stadium that was built in my lifetime and like, well, that stadium is old. They need a new stadium. And I'm like, what do you mean they need a new stadium? Right?
Yeah.
And like part of that is like, Fenway and Wrigley, like some of these like classic stadiums have been around forever and no one is advocating for a new Cubs stadium, right? And so there's a part of me that's like, well, yeah, no. A stadium that's 30 years old isn't old. But also in today's day and age, yeah, a stadium that's 30 years old is 30 years old, right? There's an entire generation that doesn't know anything but that.
Well, to bring it back to beer, which I guess we should do at some point, brand refreshes have to happen more and more frequently these days. And also, it's also fair to say it's not that uncommon in the history of, say, baseball. The Tigers have changed their logo. They've always used the Old English D, but if you look back at the quote unquote Tigers logo, there were significant changes every 30 or 40 years. Now, 30 or 40, that's a good chunk of time. But if you look at the branding of that sport, what I guess I was saying is that yes, I think that the kind of immediacy of brand refreshes and certainly of like stadiums only lasting 25 years, yeah, I think it's a little bit more modern. But to say that that's like a completely new phenomenon, you can look back through franchises and see a lot of changes in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s and the 40s.
Yeah, do you guys remember those
Even-
ugly ass Houston Astros jerseys that had like the bright orange bold stripes across?
Which came back and became like super hot like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for the longest time it was like, ooh, we're not, you know.
Well, I mean, look at how many teams in the 90s changed their logos to something cartoonish and then went back to their old logos, like the Sabres, the Islanders.
Oh yeah,
It was a lot of hockey, really.
But the Pistons did it. I mean, it's happened. It's
Forgot about
happened
the
a lot.
Pistons.
But the thing is, I mean, we talk about this as far as like all these changes that are happening to culture, or you're talking about, oh, every movie is a remake now. There was a rash of movie remakes in the 1970s. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Refreshing these ideas has always happened. It may be 25% more prevalent these days, and once again, it can correlate to like beer or other kinds of adjacent beverages or other products in the market. Yes, I think it's a little bit more prevalent, but dismissing the idea or saying that this is like a brand new phenomenon is just not true.
No, it's not. So like I recently drove by Best Buy with a coworker, and I worked at Best Buy when they went through a branding change. And it was so ill received that they pivoted back to not quite the old branding, but closer to the old branding. It was like a little bit too much of a branding change. And the guy who oversaw that branding change also happened to be then on the board of directors at Buffalo Wild Wings when I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, and they went through a branding change. People are like, brands are always going through slight changes to maintain relevance, to maintain, to be eye catching. But there is still something to me that I love about an iconic brand, right? PBR is still running off of a blue ribbon win in like 1914 or whatever the fuck it is. Like there are some things where it's like I don't. You can make minor tweaks, right? Like the Wendy's logo has gone through a minor tweak, and even McDonald's has. But those golden arches are those golden arches are those golden arches. Like,
well, I mean, when they're done well, and when there's like real legacy involved in this, and I'll talk about Sierra Nevada, right? Very classic. Look at Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. It's an old timey vibe to it, and they've maintained that through some of their core brands while refreshing their other brands. I just put it on camera. I'm drinking Sam Smith's India Ale. Sam Smith, their marketing and branding looks like it's 100 years old, but they've gotten to this breaking point with that brewery where you get old enough and having the established, when you have established in 2012, why do you have that on there? Talking about a brewery that their logo says established 2015. It doesn't mean anything. But when you are like established 50 or 60 years ago, you get this like this pop of nostalgia that allows you to kind of use your legacy as a currency.
You can,
sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Going back to Sierra Nevada, like real quick, like there, you can look at pale ale, like type in pale ale labels through history, and they are very different, and they've had many changes to it. But they even today, it has still kept that nostalgic feel to it, despite that it is very different from the early ones. And they've done a fantastic job of keeping the old with the new.
Yeah. I think they do a really good job of still kind of maintaining the aesthetic without keeping it the same. I think, like you want to talk about like the Marlins, like the old Florida Marlins to the Miami Marlins, fonts are different, colors are different, like nothing about that is the same, right? And you're right, they're very different pale ale things over the years, but they still kind of fall into this like wood etching type of look on their fonts and filigree and banner and stuff. Like they still have a lot of kind of those things over there. Like they didn't like have some weird thing where they're like, oh, we need to put copper plate Gothic bold in there, or serpent, like all these other weird things that some brands kind of went through in the '90s when everyone was putting like flags on their fonts, like they were speeding through the sky, or like all of these kind of bullshit things. So yeah, they've changed it, but I think they've still kind of maintained a certain aesthetic where it has like a more teleological evolution rather than a radical change.
Ooh, that was like
Teleological?
that was like a
Can
$5
you
word.
can you explain what that word means? Because I
So
would like to know.
okay,
Country
so
of origin.
teleology is the concept that things follow, maybe in not necessarily chronologically, but they follow. They're like you can demonstrate the evolution rather than radical changes, right? So if you the way like, you think about like evolution of language or evolution of anything else, you can see progressions and you can see kind of a common thread throughout. Maybe that's what I should have said. Teleology is the concept of a common thread, so they don't have to be the same to have a common thread. There's no common thread between Miami Marlins of today and Florida Marlins of 1997. There is a common thread. As Mike said, the Pale Ale logo has changed over the years, but it's still, you can still find a common thread through all of that. And I think to me that's been something that's been kind of unique. So like, what I was gonna say is when I really worry is when Angostura finally puts labels on their bottles that fit their bottles. That's when I'm really gonna be concerned.
I just want to say that whoever says that you never learn anything on United, we've just learned had a language lesson of a word that and a concept that Mike and I had no clue of. So we've learned something, whether or
So
not our listeners have or not.
I had no idea how to even attempt to spell that, but I tried, and I
Yeah,
got close enough to where Google was like, "Here's how it's spelled," and then
yeah,
got the actual definition. The definition does not help me at all. Uh,
yeah.
it
Well,
is
that's why I had a hard time trying to explain it because it's a
the
concept. It's like pornography. I don't know what it is, but I know it when I see it.
the explanation of phenomena in terms of the purpose they serve rather than of the cause by which they arise.
You don't get that?
Yeah,
That
that's not
makes
even what
I
perfect
I.
sense
am
to
dumb.
me. That makes perfect sense to
Um.
me. That's why I'm in
Okay.
college, Mike, and getting educated. At some point, should we introduce the concept of our show?
Yes. So we talk about alcohol, and usually consume it while we talk about it. It is still, as of time of this recording, it is the 30th, so I'm still on dry January. But by the time this comes out, it will not be. So I'm still having a Sierra Nevada Trail Pass IPA, the same one from the last episode. I've been milking it since then.
That's a shame.
Uh,
Yeah,
no, it's
I want to applaud you, Mike, for still having hope in life and future and whatnot, where you don't need to to just drink until you forget that we live in what we live in, right? So
there's been
that's
some
no.
tough days, yes. Um, but Kevin, what are you having?
I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'm drinking the Samuel Smith India Ale. This is I'm in love with things like Taddy Porter, their Imperial Stout. So many great beers. This is not one that I drink on a regular basis. I did it for Old Favorite Friday recently, and it's
Is it
delicious.
IPA but just rebranded?
I mean,
I don't remember it just being called India Ale.
so from my research, I think they kind of have always called it India Ale,
Oh,
but
really?
I could be wrong. I looked at some old labels and stuff, and it seemed kind of consistent. But if I am incorrect, someone I'm sure will chime in on that. But no, I think it's India Ale has been their beer. It's an IPA. It's an English style IPA. It's a classic IPA, and it's so funny because you look at the color of this thing, which is like almost orangey, and you taste the hop profile, and if you put this next to any American IPA from any generation, a West Coast from the 2000s or a hazy today, and people might think they're different beverages. Like, they're not even both beers. They're like one of them's a soda or something. I mean, it's so different. Yet this is what the style of beer all those things have branched off of.
Yeah, I see the old label. It does say India Ale. So yeah, it's maybe it's a what's the thing? A Mandela
A
effect.
Mandela effect. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say that.
But here's a funny thing. So I search it on Google and I go to the images, and probably about 20 images down is the image card for your old favorite Friday YouTube video.
Only 20. That's pretty good for
Yeah,
us.
like pretty high up.
And that is for a video that I had upwards of 4 views. So, I mean, that's big. Tim, what are you drinking?
So I am drinking Union Lager, which is a collab between Shells and Fair State, the two union breweries in the state of Minnesota. We can maybe dive into some of that a little bit more, but it is quite enjoyable. It's maybe Dortmunder-esque. I don't know that they call it a Dortmunder, but it's got a lot of those characters, right? And so
I'm intrigued. It's one of my favorite styles.
Right, so I think maybe I don't remember how they put it on their thing. What does their can say? It probably just says like golden lager or something like that. My old eyes can't read this. August Shell Fair State Brewing Co-op Collaborative. It doesn't say
Government warning. Do not operate.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the recycling info.
Warning, as we talked about in the last collab with Shell's beer inspired by our respective union workforces and the crispy golden lagers of Dortmund, Germany. Okay, so hey, maybe I do know what I'm talking about in some way, shape, or form.
2 things. One, I'm really proud of you for picking out that style because you do know what you're talking about. 2, I think we should have a side podcast or like a short podcast or video where Tim just reads cans. He just reads them.
Where we attempt to read cans.
He just looks at them and he's like, let me see here. What is this? Oh, product of England, India Ale. And you do it in your very folksy way. I love it.
Imported by Merchant de Vind.
So I'm gonna be that guy. Like when like somebody's grandpa or uncle probably shouldn't be driving anymore, so he just rides along, and now you have to take like your uncle to go see your grandma on like a 2-hour road trip, and your uncle just reads every road sign out loud. I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna be the one that just reads every road sign out loud, and I'm gonna drive whoever my nephew insane that I'm doing that. But he's going to have to like sigh deeply and just.
Duluth, 150 miles.
That is such a specific situation that I love the fact how you started off with, this old chestnut that all of us have experienced in our lives multiple times.
We've all been there, right?
What's funny about that, Kevin, is the second I got done explaining it, you went, oh, actually, I know exactly what he's talking about.
I got it through context. It was brilliant, and the way you described it. I've never experienced anything like that in my life. I can imagine it. You painted a picture. You're a wordsmith, sir. But I do the confidence within, when you're just traveling to Mars. When you're just on a spaceship and you're traveling there and you're going to be gone for, I don't know, 13 months, I think. When that happens?
Yeah. Do you remember that old Saturday Night Live sketch? Where it was like, you ever take an ice pick and shove it way in your ear and that really hurts? Oh, I hate when that happens.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So, cool. United Old Men Ramble.
You used to have a show where you talked about old people stuff, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So we wanted to talk today about charities. there's a lot of ways that charities get involved in the beverage industry, from special release products, fundraisers, beer fests, lots of different avenues. And Kevin has done a lot of these things with Barrel of Monks over the years. I mean, if you've been a fan of the show, you remember that every October he talks about Witty and Pink and their charity work that they do with I, f- I forget their name. Making strives.
It's strives. It's
Strives.
making strides against breast cancer
There we
is
go.
a arm of the American Cancer Society. It's just a specific arm of the American Cancer Society, and that's who we've worked with specifically for upwards of 7, maybe 8 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's lots of ways that companies get involved with charities, and a lot of times it is for the good of the charity, helping out a specific cause. But we are who we are over here, and we can be pretty cynical people. And Kevin and I, with a history of being wrestling fans, were reminded of a little quote that was made. I can't remember when exactly this was, by Stephanie McMahon. She made a claim. I'm not even gonna say exactly the phrase because I don't want to look it up, but pretty much philanthropy is the future of marketing, and goodwill is a way to advertise a company. And that's certainly true to an extent with a lot of work, you could say. But then it comes down to, do you put your money where your mouth is? Meaning, does that money go to these organizations and actually help organizations in what they are doing? Any thoughts on this, Tim? On beverage companies, charity, and is there actual goodwill involved with it?
I have been involved in a number of, beer projects where charity was involved, and I feel like I have seen both sides, right? One of the big charity movements in beer within the last 10 years was resilience, if you guys recall that.
That was that the Sierra Nevada collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Okay.
So it was trying to get a bunch of breweries around the country to collaborate on beer, essentially, for California wildfires. And I recall that coming under a certain amount of scrutiny, because maybe not every brewery that participated in resilience was actually doing it out of nobility. Not every one of them was necessarily reporting accurate numbers or providing an actual amount of their profits towards that effort. And I don't blame Sierra Nevada necessarily for that. I don't know that there were very clear guidelines onto how that was, what you had to sign up for, but I recall that there were certain breweries that came under fire for taking part in that, but not necessarily contributing fully to what that effort was towards. I think there's a lot of great opportunity for breweries to take advantage of that, but I think there are also a number of cynical brewery owners that use it as PR rather than as necessarily a goodwill gesture. Not to say that the majority of them are doing it poorly, not to say that the majority of them are sinister. I just think whenever you get into any type of a portion of the proceeds or whatever goes towards whatever, you run into maybe some dangerous waters. I've got more to say, but I don't want to hog the conversation. So, Kevin, you're making a face that leads me to believe you want to respond.
I make a lot of faces. Thankfully, our our listeners never have to see them. I, I think a lot of this comes down to how you feel about altruism. And there are people who, I'm not saying this is a bad thing or a good thing, it's just a thing, is that look at altruism like there has to be a thing that almost is like a net negative to you and a benefit to somebody else. So I go out and make a beer, and all the profits go towards this charity. So I've taken my tank space and I've done all this stuff, and I don't get anything from it. I get nothing from this, and someone else benefits from it. And then there are other people that look at altruism and say, no, we all get something of benefit every time we do something for somebody else. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's just a personal feeling of gratification, right? So if I help somebody on the side of the road when I'm on my way to work and I'm late and I see somebody who needs help changing a tire, it is a net negative to me to stop and help that person. But I feel really good about myself at the end of the day. So wasn't that a benefit to me in some way, shape, or form?
Mhm.
When you introduce money into this, when a brewery like mine partners with the American Cancer Society and does a beer where we try to raise money for them, we're very transparent in the fact that we say, when you buy a six pack at our brewery, we will give $3 to Making Strides Against Breast Cancer. When you buy a pint, we will give $2. If you buy a case, we'll give this much. Trying not to make it sound like every dollar of profit goes towards this, because honestly, we still need to make a profit off that beer. It's just
Yeah.
we're not in the position where we can just write a blank check off of this beer that we could be doing a different seasonal beer and making full profits off of it. So I think that there is a cynical nature of this that we can look at, how businesses will benefit from it. In my opinion, and maybe it's because it's my experience, I see this as, yes, it should be a marketing opportunity. It should be something where you can show someone else your values, and the people at the end of that pipeline get money to help other people. And it should be a booing thing for both the charity and for the brewery. I respect the hell out of any brewery that donates all the proceeds of anything to somebody. That's amazing. And that's a luxury that not everybody has in every business.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think for me, I appreciate what you said about transparency, and I think that's probably been my struggle. So is the lack of transparency or the implication. So I used to be the alt prop brewer for a brewery that the I don't know that they ever outright and claimed this, but they also did their best to obscure that this wasn't the case. So they tried to claim to be a non-profit brewery, and I think at one point they might have been, but for years they weren't, and they still rode on the coattails of being a non-profit brewery. And I think, to me, the obfuscation of motive becomes a challenge. So if you want to, like, yeah, please make money and do good with the profits that you make, right? Like, that's how communities work. Our community does better when I make money. And if I can go ahead and do that, whether I'm boosting the local economy or I'm supporting a charity, absolutely. And so I appreciate that you guys do transparency and say X dollars. But when it becomes this nice vague thing where you're trying to play on people's sympathy or, sense of altruism, but you're not being upfront, right? So there is a charity called Crawl for Cancer. They for years led people to believe that they were a nonprofit, and everything about that was for Crawl for Cancer. They got called out on it when a journalist looked into them, and they finally had to come out and say, "Nope, we're not a nonprofit. We are a for-profit company, but we do donate to cancer research." Still very noble. I don't hate the idea. I hate the idea that it was hidden, and I think that's where I struggle. And that's where the resilience one that I had to struggle with is some of those breweries made it sound like, oh, we're not doing this. We're just doing this only out of the goodness of our own heart. Look at us. We're amazing. without acknowledging. And I think that is the thing. So you're right. We all get a benefit when we do something good. Like the other day, there was a homeless guy outside of the grocery store. He was asking me for money, and I didn't give him anything. You know what I did do? I went in there and I bought him a chicken sandwich from the deli, and I brought it out and I gave it to him. Proud of myself for doing that. I felt good about doing that. Made me feel better about myself. But I'm not gonna pretend like, oh, you know what? I just always give out food all the time. I feel like there. I don't want to be cynical, but I've seen enough. Again, for the brewery that I brewed for, whose owner had a multi-million-dollar house, and as well as a multi-million-dollar lake house, and those funds were not made by some third-party means. They were made on the backs of this charity brewery. I think that's where I struggle, is that enough companies, enough businesses have leveraged it, use them, like make money on a beer, use the profits to give to a charity. Awesome, good. That's what we should be doing as a society. I think the obfuscation is what I struggle with.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I've had conversations with people about, and I would love to get your opinions here in just a little bit on this. Is when you see a company getting together with a charity and working on some sort of fundraising goal, and you see a vague statement like donating portions of proceeds versus a very concrete number, like Kevin was saying, $2. Like, does it make you second guess whether you want to get involved and help because of that unclear idea of what your money is going toward, how much of your money is going towards the charity? Does it ever make you second guess whether or not you want to get involved in that? Because it does to me sometimes. It depends on it depends on the business, and it depends on how much I feel like I know about the business as to whether or not I really put a lot of thought into that. But there have been other people who are business owners and business managers who I've talked to who are when it comes to making those decisions on how much do we donate, how much do we do this, they're afraid sometimes of picking a number because they aren't sure if it will actually be if they'll be able to profit from it, which is a little dumb because you should know what your cost is and then what your break even is, and then where you start making profit. But there's also those who are afraid of doing it because they're like, what if we don't make enough to really donate to the charity? And that person that I talked to about that before, I said, then donate more if you can. Like, you can, like you say, like, oh, we're gonna sell we're going to donate $1 for every pint that we sell and $2 for every 6-pack that we sell. And like, what if we only make like $500 for them? I'm like, well, would you have enough money to donate 500 more? Like what do you want to give? Like, or if you just want to give a net amount of money, just be like, you don't even need to make a huge deal about a fundraiser. Just be like, hey, we here at blah blah company are making a donation of X amount of dollars to this charity because we love them, and we have done this thing with them, this beer or this event, blah blah blah. You can be pretty open and honest about that right up from the start. But going back to the question that I had and I present to you guys, when you see something like that and they're being vague about how much they are donating, does it make you second guess or question it, or am I just being overly sensitive and shit?
No, I think it makes me second guess because like, to Kevin's point, make money off it, please. Like, I don't want you to sell a beer that you're not going to make money on, but I want you, like, you have a certain calculus in your mind, right? You're not, when you go and do this, if you're talking about profitability, okay, my margin is X. I can give up a percentage of my margin to still make money, but still contribute. But if you're going to be so vague to the point where you haven't done any math, it does feel like, especially again, the whole statement of a percentage of proceeds, right? 5%, 1%, 10%. Like, that's where it starts to be where the scale tilts, right? I don't expect you to not make money. You don't have to be so altruistic you don't make money by doing that. Oh, please make money and take a portion of that profit and do it. But the scale starts to tip for me when it becomes making it sound like making it more about, hey, look at us giving money to charity than it does about actually giving money to charity. Right? I want to have a goal. If I'm going to have a beer, I want to have a goal, right? It reminds me of the whole stupid. Do you remember in the 90s when everyone did like a walkathon and it was like pay me $1 per mile, and I was like, if you give up halfway through the walk, do I pay less? No, I'm just gonna give you $25. I don't care how many miles you walk, 5 or 25.
Was that a Bill
I know
Burr
I
bit?
want to give it.
I feel like that was a
What's
Bill
that?
Burr bit. I feel like that was a Bill Burr bit. It's like, you don't have to walk. I'll just give you $25 for the kids with cancer. Like, I'm not going to
Okay,
make you earn it.
It does sound like a Bill Burr bit, and the way I delivered it probably did not help anything. Uh, I tended to have two modes: Bill Burr or Charlie Kelly. From Always Sunny. Those are
I
like
can
the
see
only
that.
two ways I
I
ever
can see
deliver
that.
anything. Yeah, I know.
You do have the red yarn connected in the background there with a lot of pictures. So
Pepe Sylvia.
right,
He
right.
always talks about Pepe. We're talking about Pepe. Listen, I've been
Pepe Sylvia. Yeah.
I have been in a unique position in this situation where I've had to have conversations with my partners, with my marketing team about how we're going to present this and
Mhm.
thinking about how people are going to perceive it. And early on, I'll say that we said proceeds will go to because we felt like the people will think that we're being cheap by saying $1 from every pint or $2 from every pint or $3 from every six pack or whatever the number was. We were worried, and many people in my orbit were worried that that would sound like we were being chintzy and not because people have no idea what our profitability is on a six pack of
Sure.
beer. Right. And a lot of this beer I'm talking about is not profits out of my tap room. It's profits that from or the lack of profits that we send out to the market. And before I got into canning, there was a time where I only made a buck off of every six pack that got sold
Sure.
at a Total Wine and More or a Publix, right? So telling people, okay, 50 cents out of every one of your six packs goes to the American Cancer Society. Well, that doesn't sound like a lot, and that's not going to sway my purchasing.
See,
We started talking more and more about these numbers because I wanted to be more transparent. I didn't want to say all proceeds. No one's ever
Mhm.
going to investigate us. We're too small. No one's going to do a deep dive and say, "Oh, we caught you. You said you donated this much and you didn't." We also never say exactly how much we donate every year. We try to donate to a certain level because they have a certain level that they want you to get in the grand scheme of making strides. But uh, we we came down on the idea of giving a number for transparency's sake. I still think that probably when you just say proceeds, it makes the majority of people just make their own assumption, whatever that is, and hopefully purchase it. Uh, If I see that on somebody's beer or Newman's own pizza, right? I know that anything bought by them, some money goes to charity. So if I'm looking at
Newman's
frozen
Own makes
pizzas,
pizza. I thought they only did salad dressing.
no,
yeah,
they do
their pizzas aren't bad
yeah, they
too.
do everything. But
This must be a Southeast thing. I've never seen a Newman's Own pizza one time in my entire life.
listen, the
I've
pizzas are
only
actually
seen Paul Newman's face on salad dressing.
well, you're
He
missing
has
a
a
whole
lot of stuff. Yeah.
lot of stuff. But if you
Okay.
look at that, and I'm literally looking at two different brands of supreme pizza that I keep in the fridge for a random Wednesday night when I don't want to cook, I'm just going to grab the Newman's one because maybe it's 12 cents, maybe it's a penny, I don't know, but those pennies add up. And if I give it to DiGiorno, none of it's going to charity. So screw it, I'll give it to them. And that's the mentality that we look at when we're talking about how we're going to make our donations. And I think, and I hope that people are looking at things in a similar way.
So I worked for Best Buy headquarters,
Brag.
and we don't forget to brag.
Sorry,
I worked for a dying brand that was popular 20 some years ago.
Hey, could have been Circuit City.
That's true. We bought Circuit City in Canada. Funny story about that.
You did? Personally?
Best Buy did. Best Buy bought
I'm
Circuit
so
City
sorry
in Canada.
about that.
And what's really funny is that we would open up a Best Buy in the same parking lot as Circuit City, and both places would see an increase. It was one of those dirty little secrets. But what Best Buy did, right, is they were charitable, but they created the Best Buy Foundation. So it was a whole separate thing. And so they pointed out we're doing this, but we don't have to do it through fundraisers or whatever. And I'm not saying that small breweries can do this, but the idea was we are profitable enough to now fund a foundation, and like a real foundation, not one that like Eric Trump is going to get in court over for being fake. Like a real, to say, hey, we want to do this, and
we all know foundations are squeaky clean.
Well, no,
if I see the term foundation, I'm like, bullshit. Sorry.
Yeah, but the idea at least is that we're actually,
except for Heart Foundation.
You can take that and file that for 501c3. And I have worked for a 501c3 in my career. So I do know, and I know the shadiness that can go along with 501c3s, but I also know that like the auditing goes along with 501c3s. So at least there's a certain amount of legitimacy. So I would much rather go to I don't have to know how much I don't have to know how much your margins are to know that if you're committing $1, you at least are telling me I'm giving an exact amount. But when you say something like a portion of, you've lost me. At that point, I think you're probably a scam, right? Because there are plenty. Let's be honest. Susan G. Komen.
It's all marketing.
It's all marketing. It has been shown to be 99% of the donations that come into them don't go to funding cancer research. There's enough of those that I think there's enough warranted cynicism about the general public that I would rather you tell me 50 cents out of every pint. And maybe that sounds chintzy, but you know what? At least I know what you're committing to, rather than we might get some money if we've got some left over. Like, that's what that comes across to me as.
Well, there's two things there. One, your perception, you're just a little bit sharper than most people. I mean, quite honestly, because Susan G. Komen is massive. They're the biggest. They're, as far as I know, they're the biggest breast cancer charity. So people are not being that discerning. They're just not. They're not looking at things in that way. The second thing has nothing to do with any of that. But I loved Mike's joke about the Heart Foundation. And I was just thinking that there is probably someone who was like, we're gonna fight heart disease. We're gonna start this Heart Foundation. And they couldn't understand why on their Facebook page people start talking about how the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, and making Jimmy Hart references. So I that just tickled me for a good 5 minutes, and I'm just really enjoying that.
Okay, we're sick and tired of all of the wrestling gags about the Heart Foundation. We're closing that down. We're now going to start a new foundation.
4 people got that.
4, yeah, 4. And that's fine.
That's great. Well, listen, I'm gonna kind of switch gears a little bit. I mean, we're still gonna talk about the same thing, but One of the interesting things that I don't know if a lot of people know, and I know this is an industry podcast in a lot of ways, so most people listening might know, but for those of you who don't, when at least in Florida, and this might not be I'm saying this, it might not be the same way throughout the country, throughout the US for our people listening in the US, but in Florida, if you are going to do a beer fest, you have to have a 501c3 charity connected to the beer fest. It has to be a
Hmm.
benefit for some kind of charity. Now,
I don't
I
think that that's a law.
this
It's
to pull a liquor license for a park somewhere in the middle of, I don't know, wherever. This is how it's been described to me. And by the way, I'm not I'm saying this is a blanket statement, but I absolutely could be wrong on this. But this is my understanding of it. When we were trying to put together a beer fest, we were told that we had to have a charity attached. Now, were we told that by someone who didn't know what the hell they were talking about? Maybe, but that's the best of my knowledge. And I do know that the vast majority of beer fests that are put on down here do have some kind of charity attached to them, because in order to do our taxes, almost all of them give me some kind of 501c3 or adjacent paperwork that I can use and write those kegs off of my taxes, even like these massive ones or what have you. But I'll push that off. Maybe it's not a requirement. I will just say that that a lot of them do that. Uh, the question is how much of that money actually goes to them? How many charities are saying, "Well, listen, give us $1,000 and you can use our name to get this license to pull a license to do this beer fest, and you can pocket $25,000." Right? It doesn't bother us. We still get $1,000 either way. But the idea is supposed to be that the excuse me, that the proceeds benefit that charity. That's something that I find interesting, and I don't see any transparency there.
I think it's amazing they do that. I think one of the challenges that I have just in general. So as much as I talked about, the benefits of establishing a foundation, a 501c3, I mean, boy, I'm gonna tread into dangerous waters. Not with you
And by the
two.
way,
I'm fine.
Mike is furiously Googling right now, trying to find out if I'm right or wrong, and he'll probably find out that I'm wrong, by the way, but I just wanna make sure everyone understands.
Yeah, even if he finds out you're wrong, Kevin, you're right in my eyes, so it's fine. Um, I think Okay, so 501c3 doesn't mean that you have to donate 100% of your profits. Like nonprofit doesn't mean uh nonprofit. It just means that your profit goes towards an endowment or it goes towards something else. It still pays salaries. You could be the executive director of your own 501c3, and 95% of the money you bring in goes to your own payroll, and
Yep.
5% goes to an endowment for your future. So it's not a foolproof plan. I mean, okay, so like I said, dangerous waters here. Churches, right?
Let's go
Tax
there.
exempt. I'm gonna go there. Tax exempt, right? 501c3. They don't have to account for what any charitable good they're doing, other than the fact that they've just been given this idea of that they're not for profit. Joel Osteen in his multi-million dollar mansion. Like the challenges on so many of those things is that people do not understand that nonprofit or not for profit doesn't mean that they don't make money. Nonprofit or not for profit doesn't mean that people don't get rich running one
Oh,
of
yeah,
those,
for sure.
right? And I think the idea, to go back to your point earlier, Kevin, about altruism, is that people think about it as more of a noble effort. And so for me, in any of these scenarios, at the end of the day, it is about transparency. It is about transparency. And so when you guys talk about being specific, or my Bill Burr thing about don't walk because I'll just give you the money, at the end of the day, I want to know if I'm going. So I don't, Kevin, I don't mind that you're making money off of a beer that's charitable. where I start to get the icks is that there are enough charities, right? Like there are enough 501c3s where 90% of the money that they rake in does not go to anything, right? If I'm going to give money towards breast cancer research, I want to know what's actually going towards breast cancer research. One of my really good friends from college, still a good friend today, is a cancer researcher, and PhD, teaches at a university. Went to Duke and did his postgrad at Harvard, which I still think is a community college that he was lying about. But I the number of funds that they still need versus what is there one cause in the entire world that has any more charities associated with it than cancer research? I can't think of a single one that doesn't have more charities associated with cancer research.
Well, but obviously cancer research is so many different things because breast cancer is not testicular cancer and testicular cancer is not brain cancer. So you kind of have to have all these avenues
sure,
to
but
do research for them.
For sure, but you said that I'm smarter than the average person. You're smarter than the average person. People
True.
think of cancer like it's the flu. Cancer is a nomenclature for the uncontrolled growth of cells. There's not a single cause. There's not the only thing these disorders have in common is the uncontrolled growth of cells. There's no the causes, the cures, the treatment, like any of those things, they're not related. But we treat cancer like it's this one, right? Maybe not the flu, but tuberculosis or whatever. Like there's going to be this panacea that's going to cure that. That's not what it is, but the general public doesn't get that. And so when they say that this is the crawl for cancer, or the walk for breast cancer, or the this for cancer, the cancer, that's what drives John insane. Is he's like, I'm a cancer researcher because I'm concerned about the growth of cells. I'm not like trying to solve COVID, which has a very specific cause, and it's sure there's different strains, but I can all point them to things. There's a billion different things. That's like saying, like, I'm trying to find the cause for tripping. There are a billion different things that you can trip over. You can trip over the sidewalk. You can trip over a rope. You can trip over and I think the challenge is that the general public doesn't see it like that. And so when a lot of these things go into there, people go into it with blind faith that it's going to be gone towards anything, A, productive, and B, specific. And I don't think enough of these things are either of those. And so when it comes to these beer, I'll go back to resilience. Even if I believe that 100% of the breweries abided by the rules of all of that, and even though I believe 100% that Sierra Nevada was noble, I don't know what happened to any of that money. Do you guys?
Well, we never do. I mean,
yeah,
we're taking everything on faith that these people are eventually going to get that money's going to make it somewhere downstream. I mean, none of us can do our own research on this and find out where that money actually went.
I disagree. I'm not saying that we need to do our own. We need to do our own research. What I'm saying is, what I love about organizations that are transparent is not only going to say, I'm going to take $1 of my beer and donate it. I'm going to donate it to this specific thing.
Yeah, sure.
That has this specific outcome, or this specific goal, at least. And so transparency is both how much money you're giving and what is it actually doing. And that's the other half we haven't talked about, is not just the how much money you're giving, it's the what are you doing specifically with that dollar? Because if you want to say, you know what, I took this dollar from every beer for cancer research, and then I just gave it to this other 501c3 that I still don't know what happens. Or if I say, you know what, all of this goes to fund a lab that does this specific research, or all of this goes to directly to this specific charity that is like. So I have a very specific charity in the Twin Cities that I actively give to, that I actively participate with, but I know the direct outcome of every dollar I give, every product I give, every hour I give. I know the direct outcome. I know that a tent that I once used is now being used by an unhoused person because I can see them specifically doing that. But when so many charities, whether it be beer or not, say, "Oh, it's going towards this," I don't know. So I want the transparency on how much are you actually doing with this, but I want to know that it's really doing anything. I don't. That's the other challenge I have. Like that was the challenge I had. That was one of the other challenges I had with resilience.
So
Great, a bunch of money was raised. Where? What did it do?
I think
And
that's a valid.
Yeah.
I think that's a
I'll
valid
fault Sierra
concern,
Nevada for that.
and yeah, I mean they're sure. They probably didn't think through all of the potential ways that could go sideways, and it's fair because they probably put a lot of misplaced faith in a lot of bad actors. But to go to your point of wanting to know, then where does that money then go to once you've donated it? There are some places where you can earmark like what you want your donation to specifically go towards. Like my own experience here, we did a charity beer and are continuing to do a partnership with the Friends of Jonathan Dickinson State Park down here in Florida. And on their donation page itself, where we are driving people to go towards, you can earmark where you want your donation to go towards. There is like a general thing that is like can be administrative, going towards website fees, stuff like that. But you can also select a restoration.
By the way, those are perfectly valid. I don't want to say that I discount administration. Like administration is something.
But it's great that is transparent, and they have like trail maintenance, tree restoration of the observation tower, a whole bunch of stuff that you can select which you want that to go towards, and it 100% does, or at least that's what they tell me, and I want to believe them.
I mean,
even if they probably do.
I mean, even if they didn't, and they were like, you know what, we only got $15 for tree restoration this month. We actually need $25 for it. I think they might move some of the money from one thing to another. But so some of this there's a little bit of theater in all of this.
Oh, for sure.
And you have to be cautious about the money you give to different charities. There are organizations, and I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but I've looked into them in the past that rate the rate of charity, how much money goes to what percentage of their money goes to administrative costs and running the organization versus goes to actual people. When we decided to work with Making Strides, we worked with some other local organizations earlier on, which were great. We just thought that Making Strides was the best option for us because we looked at their organization and saw that most of the money went towards helping people travel for treatment, went towards treatments, went towards research. We had to do a little bit of digging and trusting some sites to find out where was the best place to put that money. And everyone has to make that decision. It's not always easy.
No, and a lot of this has to be taken on faith, and I'm not discounting that. I just really appreciate the things that have a follow up, right? Like hey, because of you, we bought 6 kids bikes. Hey, because of you, we were able to find beds for 7 homeless people. Hey, because of you, we were able to do all of those things. And I will call out, as much as we all love to treat Sierra Nevada like they're the greatest thing, and they are an amazing brewery. Resilience sucked for a lot of reasons. I think a lot of breweries did not follow through on what they said. The only thing I know that Resilience paid for was a bunch of tin tackers, because I've seen a bunch of tin tackers of Resilience all over breweries, all over the place. I have zero idea what that did. Sierra Nevada did a great job of saying we're going to go ahead and raise money, and they did a lousy job. And I'm sure they probably put it out there, but they did a lousy job of marketing. If they put half the effort into marketing what they did with that money as they did with raising the money, it would have made me feel way less cynical. But the idea of what did that go towards? I see a lot of tin tackers. I see a lot of breweries really proud they made this beer. I don't know how much money was raised. I don't know where it went. I don't know how it helped relieve the people that were unhoused because of it, or what it did towards reforestation or climate change initiatives that cause wildfires. Like that's the other part of this is I also need to see a follow through, right? And I think breweries historically have been really loud, even the ones that are doing it with the most noble efforts and the most transparency up front of we're giving this money there. And it's not up to breweries; they're not the 501c3. But I do want to know that the money I gave actually went towards something. So one, it might influence my purchase decision. But am I going to trust you again in the future? The next time you do a fundraiser. And I think that's a part where a lot of places, and again, I'm not Kevin, I don't know what you guys have done. I just know all of the other places that I've seen breweries doing initiatives. So you guys might be great at that. So I'm not trying to like judge you or fault you.
No, I didn't
But
take
what
it
I
that
am
way.
saying is that there has to be another close, like we have to close the loop as well. If we're going to use beer, which it's so fun. Like I keep on going back to cancer research. Every like legitimate cancer, like the American Cancer Society is like, please don't do drinking events for cancer. Drinking causes cancer. Please don't do drinking events for cancer. Drinking causes cancer. Like they don't like drinking anything that has to do with drinking to be associated with cancer, right? Like that already becomes a challenge. But like hey, so you know what? You're right. I went and I bought that beer and I even if I paid the same amount or I paid $1 more, I don't care. Like you know what? I did that. Awesome. I helped contribute to a good noble cause. And again, maybe it went to administrative fees. Fine. But at the end of the day, there are enough charities and challenges that I like. I very much personally appreciate when I know, hey, you know what, man, we raised $25,000. There are, uh, you know what, we were able to buy 1,250 tents to take care of homeless, and we gave that to Sanctuary Supply Depot, who distributed it this way. And I think that's the other half that maybe the loop doesn't get closed on, and that's where I still probably get a little, cynical.
So, just looked up the Resilience did raise over $8 million from the participating breweries who donated directly themselves. They didn't donate to Sierra, who then passed it on to the Butte Strong Fund, who were the charity involved with the whole resilience thing. That was as of the writing of that was June 2019, and was 75% of the participating breweries had reported their donations.
Well, I think that's the problem there, right? 75%.
Yes, that's still a big number that did not.
That's the rub, right? Is any one of these things? I don't mind people that use charity as a PR event as long as they're still using charity.
Well, I think that brings it right back to what we're talking about, right? Like, this can be a benefit for everybody. And I believe that transparency is the best way to go. And there's a certain amount of transparency that I can provide, but I don't provide exactly what Making Strides does with my money. I've done a little bit of research, talk with people and organizations in the organization, I should say, to find out and vetted them to the best of my ability. And then there is a little bit of faith that that money is going to go to the benefit of people, of individuals,
What?
and maybe it doesn't. Maybe we find out in the future it didn't. Uh, I think there's only so much that you can expect from someone without industry knowledge and a real understanding to vet some of these organizations. And if somebody stumbles and donates a bunch of money to somebody that is nefarious, or if someone's out there right now in a brewery giving money to Susan G. Komen, I don't know that I want to shame them. I think I want to just send them a post or an email that says, there's probably better places to put your money. And it's
So he,
good for you for donating, but it's not the best place to put.
well, it's so here's where I want to challenge you on that, Kevin. I don't expect you to know everything that's going on, but guess what? If you're working with a legitimate charity, they're going to be eager to tell you how they're using the money you gave them. They're going to be excited to tell you. You don't have to vet anyone. You just ask them, "Hey, I'm giving you money. What are you doing with this money?"
Don't you think
Any
Susan,
good
don't you think
any
Susan
good
G.
charity is,
Don't you think Susan G. Komen is saying the right things to people to raise more money?
certainly, but once you get a statement on the record of what they're doing with that, that now becomes public record that people can go and vet. I'm not asking you to vet that Susan G. Komen is completely perfect, but boy, if you say, hey, you know what, we gave this to Susan G. Komen and they told us they were doing X, Y, and Z with this money. Now that's not on you. That's on that charity. And so if you're going to give money to any charity, you say, hey, you know what, man? We gave money to XYZ charity, and they told us because we were able to do this, they were able to do X, Y, and Z. To me, you're absolved of guilt if there is a problem. You're just saying, hey, boy, look at us all brag about what we were able to do with this money that we got. How awesome is that? And so now when it comes to it, and it isn't that, boy, they were dumb to give to Susan G. Komen. It's, boy, Susan G. Komen told you guys that Barrel Monks, their money was going towards X and it wasn't. And I think that to me is the thing, is when you give money and you're doing it for, like you said, an altruistic reason, but also hey, it's great PR, fucking brag about what you did with that money. Brag about it. The charity wants to brag about it. And then when it comes that one of the braggers is a liar, it's going to be the charity. It's not going to be you. Brag about what you accomplished with the money. That's what I want to see. I want to see people say, hey, let's brag it. So Mike looked up resilience, but you know what he did? He had to Google it to find an answer. There was no bragging about what was done. And even then, we gave it to this foundation and we still don't know what was done with it.
I mean, there was bragging done, but that was like 5-6 years ago. I don't remember that bragging at that point. Luckily, we have internet machine that helps me find said bragging.
So even then, you found bragging that they gave it to something. We still don't know what was done with that money. What you read to me did not tell me what was done with that money.
I know. Yeah.
No, but it's hard to find, because there are not a lot of people that are interested in that. There just aren't. People are very happy. No, Tim, I'm not saying there's nobody, but percentage-wise, if 5% of the people that donate to a charity are interested, that's still a lot of people, but it's still only 5% of the people.
And could you get 10% of the people if you were more transparent and had more of those things? I think you're missing people like me.
Tim, I'm not disagreeing.
Charities that are cynical.
Tim, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Yeah. What I'm saying is that we take the easiest road. It's the easiest path. And once that money is taken in and divvied out, some people are not apt to follow up on that. And there are social media channels and stuff that might disseminate this information that you're not privy to because you don't follow that brewery, or the algorithm doesn't give you that information. My brewery, I get told all the time from one of my partners, we've got to get a message out about what this beer is. I'm like, oh, great. Let's put that message out to our 10,000 Instagram followers. And 75 of them will actually get it. And 25 of them will actually read it. So if I told you how much money we gave to making strides over the last 7 years, statistically, if you follow my feed, you would never see it. You just never see it.
Okay, cool.
So
Okay, cool. So by that same logic, statistically, no one's going to know you're even doing it in the first place. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, hey, we do this because this is good PR, but our follow up on the PR, no one sees. No, it's the same channels of information, Kevin. It's the same channels of information.
Fair. That's fair.
So you can't. So you can't be like, oh well, we don't have to do the follow up because no one's going to see the follow up. Well, if the same channel doesn't give them the information in the first place, it's also not a good PR channel. Or it is a good PR channel. Give that same channel the same amount of effort. That isn't hard. It's 2 seconds to post something.
That's
right?
That's really fair. But what you also have to take into account is once people throw their money into that black box, how many people are really that interested in where it goes? And most people, when they donate to a charity, and I would say most, they are just satisfied that they did that. They're not that interested in the follow up. And I believe in you say that you are, and that's your own personal preference. I get that. But
Sure.
if you look at a social media strategy for how you're going to disseminate your content, maybe some of these breweries are like, listen, we donated 50,000. I mean, how great would it sound to say we donated $50,000 to this charity, and they decide we're just not going to say it because we have a new beer to promote.
I think you're more likely to get people to participate the next time that you do a charity because they now know, right? If I gave money to a charity and I didn't know where it went, I'm not going to give money to that charity again. If I gave money to you for that, I'm not going to give it to you again. I think you're missing all of the other people. If you want to make sure that all of your charity beers are successful charity beers, you're going to have the long game. That to me is what it is. It's zero effort, $0 on you to do that. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 0 people see this is what we did with this. It cost you nothing to go ahead and say that. But the upside is that $0 it took you to say that. The upside is maybe someone is going to have more faith in you in the future. Don't discount just because you go, oh well. Like, as much as I'm cynical about people doing charitable things,
Everything.
You're cynical about people. You're cynical about people caring about that.
Of course. Oh no,
if they care enough to give, I think people are also, because I think there are plenty of people that give money to charities, and trust me, there's a billion charities around, and we're not all doing great financially. We want to be picky. People are getting pickier and pickier about the charities they give to. And if I give to a charity once and I don't hear anything back, man, I used to give. So every year I would do Feed My Starving Children, American Heartland Trust, and I forget the third. And I quit doing it because American Heartland Trust gave me a ton of ads and mail asking for more money, and they never could give me what they did with that money that I gave them. And that's a huge thing to me, right? The charities I care about are feeding people, particularly in agriculture, since I would not be alive if it weren't for agriculture, thanks to my dad, and the unhoused. And I've found a lot of money that I've given to for the unhoused that didn't make it there, and I've found the right charities. I think there are enough people that when they want to go into that, they want to make sure it's going somewhere. And again, $0 to brag about where that money went. Not just that it's going there, what it did. $0 for an Instagram post. It says, hey, by the way, thank you very much. You guys are so wonderful. You made this beer such a success. It was a great for everyone involved in this. Just so you know, you know what, man? You're bringing them in. You're making them a part of that. Hey, customers, thank you so much for helping us raise this money. Just so you know, this is where that money went. Now they feel ownership. Now they're excited. Now they trust you. Now they know that the next time you do a charity, you're going to do that right. You're actually engaging your customers. It's bringing more customers into you. It's making them more loyal to your brand because they trust you more. And that was nothing in terms of money, in terms of time, but in terms of goodwill, it's huge. So I don't ask you to vet every single thing. But if you're with a legitimate charity and you say, hey, by the way, what did our money do? They're going to tell you. And if they don't tell you, that's not a charity I probably want to be a part of because, again, we go back to transparency. And that's where I'm at, right? So I'm not saying you're wrong, Kevin. What I'm saying is if we're in this spirit of goodwill, it's easy to tell people what you spent money on, right?
Tim,
It's easy to do it.
do you think I'm disagreeing with you?
Well, when you took what I said and offered a counterpoint, yeah, it sort of felt like that was a disagreement.
But counterpoints are just like different ways of looking at things. Like I don't disagree with you.
I think you literally just defined what disagreement is.
But no, but presenting a counter argument is not necessarily saying I believe in that counter argument. That's not the way discourse has to work. Like I'm
Sure.
just present.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
The reason why I'm saying that is because like I think in a perfect world I think that's wonderful. I think maybe some of the cynicism comes from breweries like myself, where we once that thing is in the past, right?
Mhm.
October, every month we raise this much money. Once it's done, we've raised it and we're moving on to the next thing. And no, and
Mhm.
I'm not looking for a pat on the back for that. Some of it is also like I mean, by the way, we don't raise a lot of money. We're not cutting $100,000 check anywhere close to that. We're cutting a
Mhm.
very small check for a very
Sure.
small brewery making a very small beer. But I also don't want to be taking a victory lap and saying like, "Oh my god, we did all this great stuff," because I don't know what great stuff that we did. I I think that your perception on this is so valuable and it gives insight to how people can foster that goodwill over a long period of time. I think that the people who don't do that are probably making either A, calculations that don't add up the same way that the way you're looking at it them are, or B, just aren't thinking about it that much. They're literally just moving on to the next thing. And that's not good, that's not bad, that's not there's no value judgment on that. It's just kind of where they are. And your perception on that is valuable. Honestly, what you've said and the way you've kind of articulated yourself does change my perception on this and make me want to think about this more and how we'll present our donations and stuff going forward. So I just wanted to tell you that I
No,
wasn't
I
disagreeing with you.
appreciate that.
I was listening to you and trying to find different avenues and ways of thinking about this that might contradict this, but you provided great counterpoints to it.
I mean, I think about this podcast and its charity event with my previous podcast. Uh, you know what Mike did a great job of doing? Recapping what we accomplished with that podcast. Right?
I mean, Mike does a great job with everything he does. I mean, just look at it.
But the reality is to me it wasn't about hyping up guys we're doing this stupid six guys get drunk on a podcast live as a live stream and give us money. To me, it was the things that I was proudest of was when Mike would at the end of that, or a day later, like when all said and done, like leave the donations open. To me, what I was proudest of. I never told my family or friends to listen to the podcast because I was ashamed of the way I acted on those. But what I did always brag about was the money that we actually raised and what we did with that. And to me, that's the story. If you're really doing this, like you don't have to do it to make you don't have to do it to not make money. But again, this is charity. So you should be most proud of not how much money did I make off this beer. You should be most proud of how much was I able to support. a charity, and that's what Mike was always really good about with that holiday podcast. Was, hey, thanks guys, because you guys came and listened to Six Chimps on a Davenport be dumb for 3 hours over the Christmas holidays. We were able to donate this money to this thing. And then we can also tie that back to this charity does this exact work type of thing. To me, that's where the loop still needs to be closed, and where I still feel like breweries fall way short on that. Right? So yeah, Mike, you found an answer for resilience, but they were lousy about that. They were great on marketing, raise money, lousy on marketing what it did. Lousy on it. It's lousy marketing. You're a marketer. It's lousy marketing.
Yeah, I think like what I said earlier is there was probably some balls dropped on and too much goodwill provided to people to being like, hey, you guys all do this by this day, donate the amount that you say you're going to, and just let us know, right? And when people didn't do that, they were maybe caught with their pants down a little bit, but yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they are a brewery and they were trying to do something charitable and put a lot of faith in other people to be charitable on that. And it didn't work out exactly how they wanted to. They still did raise a lot of money
Oh yeah,
through the
yeah.
help of that. And to the people who did follow through on what they said that they were going to do. And we shouldn't lose track of that. But
Absolutely. It was
yeah,
a
were there
very noble
issues? Of
pursuit.
course.
Yeah, it was a very noble pursuit, and a lot of breweries did a lot of good things, and I think it's amazing. I don't want to pretend like the resilience effort was a bad uh, idea. I just think that there were opportunities for abuse, and I think there were opportunities for them to do a better job of communicating. Right. So I love it, Kevin. Like to your point earlier about I'm still gonna make money on this beer, and good, right? I think that's important. Like I don't want anyone to ever feel like the only reason I'm drinking this beer is because it does 100% good, right? Because there's also good in just making another company successful, right? I can't raise money next year if I can't survive to live to next year. You
Oh
know,
yeah, I mean,
right? Right?
without a
Like
doubt, yeah.
that's
If we
yeah,
go to business, we're
that
not raising $0 next year. So okay.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think the challenge is that capitalism, in its very nature, has been kind of cannibalistic, and I think that's been a challenge.
Well, at the end of the day, listen, organizations are going to exploit loopholes. And if you can find a way to use your philanthropy to maximize your profits, and let's look at it that way.
Hmm.
I'm going to use my philanthropy, my connection with this business to make as much money as I possibly can. A lot of us would look at that in a negative light. A lot of us. And I get that. At the end of the day, if any money filters towards a charity, as long as it is not completely disingenuous, it is not lies, right? If you're lying about how much money is going towards it, I think you're doing something wrong. If you're being transparent and saying, "Listen, if you buy this beer, I'm going to donate 1/10 of a penny." Okay, this year we raised $7.34 for cancer research, but you were transparent with it. I feel like that is where we should be striving for. But at the end of the day, anyone who's trying to put uh, visibility on different charities, provided they're decent charities, I think we should applaud them for at least doing that and
Sure.
respect
Oh,
that
absolutely,
respect that
absolutely,
perspective. And
absolutely.
but at the same time, hold people accountable. Ask questions. There's nothing wrong if you see that and you want to go into a tap room, and if it says on the thing $2 goes towards American Cancer Society or Making Strides, and you want to ask that question, the bartender should know. Someone should know
Yeah,
what's actually happening and be able to answer those questions, because that transparency, it that's the next step in actually doing this the right way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, I think the crux of it is breweries that use charity do it out of nobility, but they also do it out of marketing. They just haven't closed the marketing loop. Marketing the entire marketing piece. This should be a marketing campaign, not a one-off. You're right. Bartenders should know
Mike?
exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike,
And
you are the marketer.
Mike can close the loop for the show
Closed.
and for this entire conversation. Mike can close the loop. Mike, no pressure.
Yeah. I mean, charity work within companies is something that is near and dear to me. I do look at it as, yes, it is a marketing type of thing as well, but man, I want to do good in my community, and I want to be a part of whatever I can to help however I can, like in so many different areas. I mean, I look back to 2020, the year so many people want to forget, but like I donated more money that year than I ever had probably my entire life previously to that, and it felt so good to be able to do that and help people here locally in this community with charities that we donated to. Philadelphia, a city that I love to death. I donated to a number of local charities up there as well. And like,
you bought Eagles tickets?
yeah. Well,
Oh.
I'm still well,
I assumed like that was donated to charity. Was at least, you know.
I get it. I'll show you a fun screenshot after this that has to do with Eagles tickets. But the stuff, it can go hand in hand, and it can just, what you said there is, it can be a continued thing. It doesn't have to be a one-off thing. It can be a continued partnership, and that's one thing that I'm stoked about with that we're doing at Copperpoint, working with the Friends of Jonathan Dickinson Park. Is we did one-off with them, but we loved working with them so much that we came back and were like, hey, let's continue to work together with this brand new year-round beer that we're putting out there. We put a QR code on the can that takes people to a page on our website about the beer and about our partnership with them, and providing people with ways that they can donate to them. We are a corporate member of the Friends of Jonathan Dickinson Park through our donations that we've made towards them. And it's stuff like that that really makes me happy about being a marketing person, is being able to create community connections and stuff like that.
A QR code is brilliant. Honestly. Because what you're really...
It's one of those things, like you said, that pretty much costs nothing. We were already printing a can. So putting a QR code on it, and they're digitally printed cans, so we're not looking at 26 pallets of this, but it was such an easy thing to just put a QR code that says "Learn more," and it just goes to the page on our website for that beer, and it contains the information on the beer, so people can learn about that and about our partnership with the Friends.
And because it's a QR code, it's a living and breathing thing that people are going to, that you can continue to update people on as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And Mike, that to me is the way to close that loop. That's brilliant. See, Mike, I really call you a genius.
He did it. He did exactly what we expected him to do. Good job, Mike.
I thank you. So I think that's a good enough point to head on into last calls. The point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want, beverage related or not. The only rules are that it is uninterrupted, unopposed, unobjected. I'm going to start things off here because I remember last episode that I was debating between two different things to do mine on, and I said one was a good thing and one was a bad thing, and I went with the bad thing, and I said I would do the good thing on the next episode, and I don't remember what the good thing was. So I'm not going to do that thing. But what I am going to talk about is that in this time in between episodes, the world lost a crazy, talented, crazy person in David Lynch. He passed away on January 15th, 5 days before his 79th birthday. He is, to call him a visionary to cinema is probably an understatement. I know that there's not a lot of people who maybe know him by name, but if you are into film, if you're into TV, you've probably heard his name. You may have seen one, two, three, all of his work. I wouldn't even consider myself a huge fanboy of his. There's a lot of stuff of his that I haven't seen, but I would be lying if I didn't say that Twin Peaks is one of the most influential pieces of media on my artistic stuff, especially the third season, The Return, that he did in 2017. I just love weird, bizarre stuff, and he was the king of surreal. And I don't know if we'll ever have anyone like him. There are so many people who uh, take influence from his work. Damon Lindelof is one who has spoken ad nauseum about the influence of David Lynch on works that he's done, such as Lost and The Leftovers. Um, but I just feel like the world needs more people that think like him and make stuff like him, even though no one ever will make stuff like him ever again. But man, if you've never gotten into David Lynch and you're at least open to the bizarre and the surreal, please get yourself in and dive headfirst in, and you're going to be what the fuck, but also I think you're going to be really happy by the end of at least seeing some of it. Kevin.
So I will stick with the topic of the day, talking about charities. I was actually hoping during the show, but it just kind of never naturally came up. But we'll be working soon with a organization called Survive First. And I'm actually traveling up to Cocoa Beach to do a beer fest where all the proceeds, and they say every single penny of proceeds for this beer fest go to Survive First. Survive First is a group that looks to provide mental health access to first responders. And this is first responders, police, firemen, EMTs, anyone that's in that category. And this is a organization that my wife is working with intimately because she runs the counseling department at Lynn University. And they are putting together a program where they are going to help teach counselors how to work with first responders. It's a different kind of group. First responders see horrific things that sometimes for some therapists are too much, and they don't know how to access and how to give them therapy because of the trauma that is involved in that line of work that is very foreign to most people. And I'm a huge mental health advocate because of my wife. I'm currently seeking an undergrad in psychology and hopefully a master's in clinical mental health counseling. And this is a thing that for my wife, for myself as a brewery owner, we want to get involved in. It's something that if it strikes you, if this seems like something that is really important to you, I believe this charity really does do work directly with human beings. It finds people in crisis and helps to get them the mental health care that they need. We need this in every segment. Everyone needs this, right? Surgeons need mental health care. Now, they make a lot of money, but they still might not get it because they don't have people advocating for them or helping them understand their needs for mental health. Every segment of society needs this. This is just one segment and a great charity with really, really good people trying to help others. And like I said, if it's something that strikes you, it's called Survive First, and you want to donate some money to them, give them a little jingle, please do. For those of you in South Florida, that have access to our beer, sometime in the next 2 or 3 months, we'll be doing a beer where proceeds, not all of them, but a portion of those proceeds, we haven't decided how much exactly yet, but it'll probably be similar to Making Strides, will go to Survive First. So we hope you'll check that out.
Tim?
Boy, I don't want to be breaking the rules of unopposed. I just wanted to mention on the David Lynch thing, someone the other day told me that my newly found long hair has a very David Lynch vibe to it, like literally a week ago. So that it made me very happy that you gave a shout out to him, because it's someone who I agree. I love people who can play in the absurd, and I'm not intentionally trying to look like David Lynch, but I do appreciate the absurds. That was awesome. And also, Kevin, obviously I've spoken at length about mental health, so both of you now make me feel inadequate on my last call. The one thing that I was going to do, and again, this was even before we talked about the purpose of this podcast tonight, is I've been very I live in Minnesota, and I don't know, Kevin or Mike, if you know that our weather here. I know you're from Michigan and Philadelphia, but I also know that you guys are now like these lazy Florida fair weather people. It gets fucking cold here. And one of my biggest, the thing that I've been very passionate about lately is Sanctuary Supply Depot. It's an independent bookseller that decided they're gonna turn themselves into also being a repository for any donations that they can take to homeless encampments around town. And it's probably the thing I care about the most. I give all my old camping, because I go backpacking and I have a lot of shit that I leave around. I really wish more brands of backpacking would realize that backpacking is just treating homelessness like it's a leisure sport. And I really wish that they would do a better job of donating things like titanium pots or backpacking stoves or quilts or tents or all of these things. I really hope that we have a trend where we learn that we can give more things to the people that are suffering from homelessness, whether it be for mental illness reasons or for family issues or addiction issues or whatever. I think we are struggling right now. And when I see temperatures dip into negative digits here, I keep my garage warm and a cot in there and everything, that someone could spend the night. I just really wish that we could figure out that I don't care if anyone is in a homeless situation of their own doing. They're a human that needs to be looked after, right? And we as a society should be looking after other humans. So I guess my plea, to our listeners, is to remember that the unhoused are still human, and if you want to contact me about how we can help to improve the situation for the unhoused, I'm very excited and eager to find a way that we can improve that situation.
Awesome. You want to tell people how to reach out to you?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You said if anyone wants to reach out to you, tell
How
people
do
how
they
to
get
reach out to you.
Well, there is a tim@unitedwedrink.com email address that I check every 5 minutes, or once a year. You could also, find me at Tim Johnson MN at Blue Sky. You can reach out to us on the UnitedWeDrink.com website, which if our listeners have not visited the UnitedWeDrink.com website, please do. There's a lot of ways for you guys to contribute to the podcast and help us create the mediocre content that we already do. So please go ahead and check us out there. We are lucky enough to find ways to make us bring you this adequate content every other week. So please go ahead and reach out to us there.
Mike,
That was
you don't have to do anything the rest of the
yeah.
episode. You're done.
I also do like how we went from mediocre to adequate all during that monologue.
We
So
fluctuate.
we made improvements and we didn't even know it.
Yeah,
It's a
except for
free
Made In
fluctuation.
Cookware, which is superb.
It's a free fluctuation. We're both mediocre and adequate depending on
Oh,
the
and now we're
exact minute
atrocious.
of
Okay,
the
now
podcast.
we've come back down. Kevin, do you want to plug anything?
No.
Tim?
I hope that you guys mostly just go find a way to harass Kevin, who's not on social media. So
Good luck.
Yeah, well, no, that's why I'm going to
But that
plug all of the.
involves then in person, and that is like literally harassment.
Oh no! I just meant go bombard Barrel of Monks social media with we need Kevin to be funnier on Old Favorite Fridays. We need Kevin to
Here's a dirty little secret. We do have a social media, like a company that monitors our page, but if you comment on anything we do that warrants a response, 95% of the time I'm the one that does the response. So you can harass me if you really choose to do so. I hope you won't.
So
But if you choose
there
to
you
do
go.
so,
I plugged
Next
the right
Old
thing
Favorite
there,
Friday, I'm going to be like, "Hey, Kevin, don't you hate pants?"
Good reference. I appreciate that. Canyonero. Sorry.
I'll just plug. You can find me on the sky that is blue at Mike Loves Beer. You can follow our show. We're on Blue Sky as well at United We Drink. We're also on Threads and Instagram at United We Drink Pod. Our website is unitedwedrink.com. Where you can listen to this show. You can also find us on any of the major podcasting services such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Podcast Addict, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts, you can find us on there. If you're on Apple Podcasts, rate and review us. Really helps, or at least so I've been told. I haven't seen any indication of such, but they say that it
in 6
helps.
months when this becomes really popular, since apparently our archive is way better than our live content.
Yeah, over the holiday break, we got like a huge increase in listens to our back catalog. Maybe Kevin's dad just went back and listened to everything all over again a bunch of times.
That could be true. And by the way,
true, thanks, Jim.
And one person doing that would account for a huge uptick percentage-wise in our listens. Which we probably shouldn't be saying that out loud. And by we, I mean me.
Because that's what potential sponsors would love to hear. Is that
are we still recording, or have we? Oh, the bear's still. Yes, we're.
The bear's still here.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we are still recording.
I thought this was the after time when we just talk shit. Okay.
Well, thank you everyone once again for joining us. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Eric. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks with a brand new episode. We'll see you then. Cheers.
Cheers.